Hello, humans. It's your host, Kory. Welcome to a brand new episode of A Well Cared For Human, the podcast. This is our first episode of 2025. And whether you are a longtime fan of the show or this is your very first episode with us, in all cases, we're so glad that you're here with us. And I want to start off the episode by saying this is not your typical episode. Think of it as the season 2 trailer, though we don't really have seasons for A Well Cared For Human. I've done 123 of these episodes so far, and I never broke them into seasons, so it'd be very strange to say season 2 and then do another 123 episodes. And so I'm just going to say that going forward, there's a few changes, and so I want to share those changes with you guys. And so think of this more as an update to the show and a bit of a hint, a kind of teaser about the interviews that I've just recently done that I'm going to be releasing soon. So the first thing that I want you to know is that I am going to change the format of the podcast. So in the past, I was releasing one every single week, and I was doing that onto Spotify through my distributor, Spotify, Apple, everywhere that you get podcasts that aren't visual. And then I was also cross-loading an episode up to YouTube. So if you're watching the video version here on YouTube with us, then you will have seen the video versions of that as well. I am going to continue to have both a video version and an audio-only version for everybody to make it as accessible as possible. But what's going to change is that I'm going to release them every 2 weeks instead of every single week. Part of that is because I am really committed to continuing to produce good content for you guys, but when it's every single week, I do tend to burn out and get a little bit obsessive. And also because the episodes are going to be a little bit longer. So a lot of our episodes going forward are going to be interviews. If you have been a longtime fan of the show, you'll know that the first 123 episodes were completed as solo shows. That means that there was a topic or an idea, and then I would just turn on the camera and set up the microphone, and I would share my thoughts and experiences with you about that. And I still will be doing solo episodes, but I'm also opening up the show to interview guests. And the reason why I've decided to do that is because while it's great that I share my experiences and I share the wisdom that I've gained through the things that I've endured with you guys, my experience is just one version of living, and there are many things that we can learn from other people. And so I'm going to start reaching out to people who I think have great stories to share with you, who I think would be a really wonderful source of wisdom and guidance, or just how to live. How are we going to do it? How are we going to get through? Just people that I think will be really good at sharing their stories, their information, and I'm going to invite them onto the show and then be able to share that with you as well. Now, I've already interviewed a few people, and so I'm very excited about it. We've got a therapist coming on the show, my good friend Dr. Michelic, who is going to talk about when you need to find a therapist, do you need a therapist, how to know if it's the right therapist for you. I've also got an interview coming up with my friend Shrum Thor. She is a baddie, an entrepreneur. She's a TEDx speaker. She does a lot of things in the entrepreneurial space, and she's a coach. And so she's going to talk about how following your ambition but taking care of yourself at the same time is really important. I've also got USA Today bestseller Angela Roque, who, for those of you who have followed me from my fiction career, you already know that Angela and I have been best buds for a long, long time. But she recently had to overcome stage 3 cervical cancer, and so she has a story to share about how to love your body, how to overcome chronic illness or any kind of scare like that, what it does to your relationship with yourself. So I thought she would have an amazing story to share. And so I have all these great guests coming, and I'm really excited to share their stories with you. And for that reason, because when there's more than one person and there's a dialogue, they are longer episodes. And so in the past, when I did the solo shows, they were probably 15 to 20 minutes. Some of them ran a little bit longer, like 30 minutes, but it was a shorter, more compressed episode. But when I'm interviewing people, it's going to be longer. And so that's the reason, one of the reasons why I'm going to start spreading the episode releases out a little bit more. Also, just because, as I mentioned, I'm committed to having a well-cared-for human go on for as long as possible, to always be a free resource for you, to help you with your journey of healing, taking good care of yourself, building that amazing relationship with yourself. And so I need to make sure that I don't burn out. How fantastic would it be if I did a podcast about how to take care of yourself and not burn out, and then burned out while I was making it? So I want to really be mindful of how I pace myself going forward. So we're going to change it to every 2 weeks you're going to get a new episode from me, whether that's an interview or a solo episode. In addition to that, I wanted to let you know that right now on my newsletter, I just sent out a poll asking people to help me look at my options for projects in 2025. So there's so many things I could be doing, and because I'm a very creative, idealistic person, I want to do all of them. But I need to make sure that it's something that's resonant with you, that it's going to be useful and helpful to you. And so if you could, please take that poll and let me know which kind of projects are most exciting for you. Like, do you want me to do a workbook? Do you want me to do more tutorials on YouTube about how to do journaling or how to meditate or how to do this and that? And so that would be really useful to me to get that information from you. If you're in the Patreon community, then you're also going to see some structural changes around that content as well. So right now on the Patreon, what I had been doing in the past is I had been putting the episodes on there early. That was basically the promise that I made to the community, is that you'll get everything first. And so now I'm going to change that a little bit, where it's going to be less about making sure you get everything first and more about you getting more. And so I'm going to always have an after show now. So there'll be the main interview, for example, but then there's another piece of content that goes with that episode that is me having a further dialogue with the person, or me putting out worksheets or journal exercises, things that supplement that particular episode or just a side adjacent topic. And so the structuring of the Patreon is a little bit different. So if you're loving what we're doing here on the Well Cared for Human podcast and you feel like you want more of it, you want more of our time and attention, then that would probably be the place for you to check that out to see if that's right for you, if you feel like joining up. So that structural change will happen to the Patreon as well. So if you are a member, you're going to see these different tiers roll out and kind of a description of what's going with each tier going forward. I haven't done that yet, so you're probably not going to see it as soon as you see this episode, but it is coming in the next month or two. You'll see those changes on the show. Something else that might be a great resource for you if you're not sick of getting email from me is you might want to join my newsletter. Right now I'm in the process of segmenting my list, so I am also a fiction writer. Many of you know me from that space, and so I have 32 published books. Only one of them is a self-help book, and one of them is the Who Killed My Mother memoir, right? So all those other books, those are fiction and poetry, and so I have a list dedicated to my work, my creative work, and I wanted to separate it a little bit more because not everyone who's interested in my fiction or my poetry is interested in the self-help, self-personal development stuff, and so I'm in the process of separating those lists. And once I do that, I'm going to be sending letters directly to just the Well Cared for Human fans that have links to the most recent episodes, that have links to any of the supplemental materials or the videos that I post on YouTube. I'm going to be thinking of it as a weekly digest where everything will be in one place. So that way you don't have to go around to my different social medias and channels and try to hunt down what I'm doing. You can just find it in one place for you. So if that sounds useful, you might want to go over to my newsletter list and sign up for it. And I will put that link in the show notes of this episode as well. You'll be able to just click on it and sign up for the newsletter. And then that way you'll be getting the weekly digest when they start up. I haven't launched that yet because, as I mentioned, I'm in the process of segmenting that list as we speak. So if you get a random fiction letter from me beforehand, before that, don't panic. Doesn't mean you're always going to hear about it. Or maybe you'll like that kind of thing. But essentially, it's going to be just the Well Cared for Human weekly digest going forward. I'm thinking that will probably be finished and prepped no later than mid-February, but we'll see. Again, I'm trying not to push myself and burn myself out. When I got sick with COVID last year, which is why the podcast ground to a halt, because I didn't have a voice and couldn't breathe for a long time. So the first week and a half was just me not being able to speak, and then after that it was so breathless when I would try to record episodes. I was like, oh man, I can't do this. And so that's why I had to go on that unplanned, let's say, hiatus. But now going back into it, I just want to be very hesitant because I don't like stopping and taking breaks. That sounds probably why I burn out. I don't like taking breaks. Do you hear me? Can you hear the words I'm saying? I don't like taking breaks, but I want to be more measured going forward. I want to make sure that if something happens, that kind of pause is built in, that doesn't feel so disruptive. And so I'm just being more mindful going forward. But anyway, all I wanted to say is that if it would be useful to you to get that weekly digest, go ahead and sign up for the newsletter. All that's going to be organized soon. I'm just pacing myself to get there. And so go ahead and join us. And also because I don't know when you'll come to this episode, because these episodes are designed to be evergreen. And so you might be listening to it now when I release it, or you might be coming to it in a month or 2 months. And so everything might already be set up for you. I have no idea, but whenever it comes around to your world, whenever you find this episode, please join us over on the Patreon or the newsletter, or you can follow me on social media. I am going to be doing more YouTube shorts, more YouTube content, and also Instagram content. If you have any recommendations for guests that you would love for me to invite onto the show and to have a conversation with, whether that's a content creator or that's a podcaster or just someone in the real world who you know, who you think is really inspirational and has something to share with us about how to be well, how to take good care of ourselves, how to have that great relationship with yourself, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me, Kory@KoryMShrum.com. Otherwise, I will continue to keep you guys updated. I am also going to add to the show a segment in the beginning that's a personal update. I guess we should try that now. Right? Let's do the personal update. I'm going to do that at the beginning of the episodes going forward. So it'll be kind of like, hello humans, and then here's my update, and then we'll get into the interviews. But I wasn't planning to do an update today, but now I feel suddenly inspired, so let's just do it. So what has happened between the last time I spoke to you and now? Obviously, I got over COVID. I didn't think I was going to. I got so sick, sicker than I have ever gotten that I can recall in my adult life. It was really, really rough. I had told my doctor that I thought I was dying. I was like, I just need you to tell me that I'm not dying because I think I'm dying. And she's like, you're not dying. She's like, but you are very sick. And so it turned out that if you get COVID for the first time, that initial viral load makes you feel a lot sicker. So she thinks that it was my first time contracting it. And I thought that was interesting because Kim and I, my wife, we got all of our vaccines. We were really careful. We had to be careful mostly because she has asthma and some respiratory stuff. And so I was scared that if I got sick, I'd make her really sick. But it was interesting because we contracted it the same time and I got way sicker than she did. And so take that for what you think. Take that for what it is. But the idea that it doesn't really matter who gets sick. Wow, it just feels like a crapshoot about how sick you'll get when you'll get sick. And so it doesn't matter if you're super careful. I don't want to say it doesn't matter if you're super careful. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself and your loved ones, obviously. But it just seems like there's also this hand of fate involved. And my hand was up. And so I got really sick. And then I lost the momentum of all the things that I was doing, and so it was really slow to build back up. That said, I was still able to share the holidays with my family, spend a lot of good time with them. We went down to Florida. I got some sunshine. At first, I was really worried because when we first got there, it was cold and it was rainy, and I was like, absolutely not. I did not drive 2 days to get down here just to be in the cold gloom. I can have that back home in Michigan. But the weather actually turned out to be really nice after that. Max loved it. He loved doing walks all the time. If you're watching the video version, Max is actually behind me over here. You can see him on the couch being a dog, being the cutest dog in the world. But we had that time in Florida. We had time with family. And I also was able to put out into the world my 12th edition in the Shadows in the Water series. So the 12th book is First Light. And so I was able to get that out into the world, and I've heard a lot of positive feedback. So thank you for everyone who's reading it, who's reviewing it. I really appreciate that. If you want me to talk more about my fiction and my work in future episodes, you can let me know in the comments, or you can email me, and I'll also be sure to include that part in the update. Otherwise, I've started working on a new project, a book called Hello Dreamer. I had been putting this on the back burner for a long time because I was very intimidated by it as a creative project. I've always really loved non-linear narratives, so if you're familiar with films like Tenet or Inception or Arrival, where things kind of go back and forth in time, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to do. And so it's a very big story. It spans a lot of time, just from past to present to future, and so I'm going to see how it goes. It's definitely a creative challenge for me, but I feel like I've been writing for so long that if I'm not taking any risks at this point, like, what am I even doing? And so I'm going to give it a go. We're going to see how it works out. I'll give you guys more updates as I go if you're interested. Otherwise, I don't think I have any more information to share with you at this time. I'm just a person in her house, making content for you guys, sending you guys lots of love, working on my projects, my books, trying to survive the Michigan winter. It's so cold and dark here that I do feel like I could die. But I've got my sun lamp and it's getting me through. And my wife and I take forward ambulation walks every morning. And our forward ambulation walks, because we read this study about how walking in the morning, first thing in the morning, getting the sunlight in your eyes, that's supposed to help you be like healthy, happy, and well. And so I don't know if it's strong enough against a Michigan winter, but we're trying. We're trying. But anyway, I don't have anything else at this time. If you have a specific question for me, just drop it in the comments or shoot me an email. Otherwise, I will be back next week with another episode of A Well Cared For Human. And until then, please take good care of you. This episode of A Well Cared For Human was written and produced by me, Kory Marie. The music was by Late Night Feeler and Esther Abrami. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider visiting my Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you get early ad-free access to the episodes, as well as a monthly patrons-only Q&A, bonus videos, and more. Not to mention that your Patreon support lets me know that you find value in the show and want it to continue. You can find me on Patreon by visiting www.patreon.com/Kory Marie. If you can't support the show financially, that is okay. You can still subscribe to the show, leave a review of the show, and recommend the show to your friends, not just the neurotic ones. All of this helps so much. And as always, thank you for listening.